You have the intellect, you have the wherewithal, you have the smarts, you have the ability. Don't you dare doubt yourself just because you're not X, Y, or Z. A lot of our kids are missing hope, and frankly, they're missing exposure to people who look like them, who are out here doing the thing. So I encourage everybody, whatever you look like, if you look like me, if you're out here wearing a hijab, if you have purple hair, whatever it is, if you're whatever normal is, get out there and let kids see you doing what you do so they know they can as well.
Empower You podcast is devoted to bringing real-world wisdom and encouragement to our listeners. We discuss a multitude of life principles and the process from an economic, cultural, and societal perspective. We believe that through tough conversations and shared wisdom, we can pave the path and leave a ladder for the future. Subscribe to our channel and let us empower you.
The University of St. Francis Music Technology Bachelor's and Associate's degree programs allow students to focus on the genre and specific area of the music industry that interests them. With concentrations in audio production, audio for video post-production, live sound, music business, and contemporary artist development, there's something for everyone. Here are just a few examples of students' music. Go to sf.edu to learn more.
Welcome to Empower You podcast. My name is Kidboy Cooper, and I am your host, and I'm really glad that you're here. So thank you for spending some time with Empower You podcast. We have a really incredible interview, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you guys, okay? So before we get into who our guest is for this interview, because that's dope, I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about what we're going to be discussing, if that's cool. Of course it is. All right, so here's the deal. This entire series, this season of Empower You podcast, we're talking about education. I'm really in an interesting place with education. I think it's super important that we have valuable skill sets and things like that. I'm a skill set guy. I believe that, you got to be able to put elbow grease to something and create results from it. And that's what gives you more and more value. There's probably some other generational things in that, right? Just like the hard work type deal. But I really think that it's important that we have a broad understanding of what education is and what it looks like. And what our next steps are in terms of empowering the next group, right? The young people, the folks who are coming out of high school, the folks who are still developing, who are listening and watching all the things that we do. And I want them to feel thought of in terms of Empower You podcast. So today on this episode, we're going to be talking about the faces of education. All right. Now, some of you may not know this, but there's a real lack of diversity in higher ed, right? And there's a whole story behind that, why there aren't as many people in higher ed who are of color. And with that whole, statistic, you have a doctrine behind what it means to be educated and what education looks like on an interpersonal level, on a community level. And I think as a person of color, as a Black man, I think it's important that we really combat this idea of what it looks like to be educated, or what educators look like, or what kind of person you got to be in order to have value in an educational space. I think we got to talk about this kind of stuff because we're allowing systemic issues to fester beneath the surface if we don't address some of these setbacks our young people are running into when they choose, or when they want to choose, to become more educated or pursue some higher education degrees or understanding. All right, so there it is. All right, that's the premise. But y'all got to listen to this, though. The guest I have for this episode is just absolutely incredible. So not only is she a community activator, and I know some people say activist, but I say an activator because she pulls the community into all of the decisions makings that she does. She also is an architect and uses her architectural design skills to facilitate the reimagining of urban areas and distressed communities in order to bring new life and enthusiasm into them. She is a devout, a spiritual learner and a scholar of her trade and her ability to impact communities through inclusion and through empowerment. And I'm thrilled to have her here, and she's spending some of her time with us. And I'm super grateful. So without further ado, I want to bring to the live feed my friend. I'm gonna call her my friend from now on, now that she's been on the show. Miss Rena Bradley. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I think I need to rewrite my whole LinkedIn profile page now that I've heard that introduction. But I'm great. How are you, friend?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm excited to unpack some of this topic with you. So before we get started, though, before we really get into it, tell me a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about you, not just the cliff notes, right? Some of the things that you would love for our listeners to know about you.
Sure. Well, I think most people know what I do at Bridge of Grace. I'm a community activist or activator, as you said. But as for me, my own background, I grew up in southeastern Michigan, just north and west of Detroit. My family was kind of the Brady Show. What do I say? The Cosby Show meets the Brady Bunch, right? So blended family. My parents are college educated. My mom was the first person in her family to go to college, which I think is a tremendous accomplishment. And my father was actually born on a sugarcane plantation to a mom who was likely a sharecropper and became a small business owner from those humble beginnings. So I felt like both of my parents lived the American dream and really instilled upon my four sisters and I that we could do the same, that there was nothing that could stop us because there was nothing that stopped them. But that's a little bit about me. People usually ask me like my testimony, my deep, dark, about my deep, dark history. It's like, man, I grew up baking with my mom. I rode my bike with my dad. I got in trouble for silly stuff like picking up trash on the side of the road because my dad thought I looked homeless and I was a tree hugger. So it was pretty tame. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that.
That's amazing. And, I think coming from environments that give you the levity to be able to just enjoy some of the simple, normal things in life, I think is such a blessing.
It is.
And I think we wrap up Blackness with trauma. We wrap up Blackness with pain. We wrap up Blackness with overcoming adversity, which I think, for Black people and other people of color and other people of various backgrounds, that's very much the case. However, we also need to talk about the amount of love that happens in communities of color, the amount of normalcy that happens in communities of color, the amount of good food that happens in communities of color, and all of the hugs and the familial bonds. We don't talk enough about that. So I love the fact that you don't need, and I'll say this, you don't need trauma to be amazing.
Wow.
Your story is still incredible. And I think sometimes we forget that. You don't have to be traumatized. I mean, we all got something going on, right? But you don't have to, got shot 3 times and dragged by vehicles and, there's still so much climbing that happens without any of those common stereotypes. And so I I love your story. I think it's amazing.
Well, thank you.
So what brought you to Bridge of Grace?
Oh my goodness. Well, I felt called to Bridge of Grace, which sounds like such a weird answer, especially from me. I'm a very logical person. I just want the world to know that. I have a very scientific and technical mind, but I found out about Bridge of Grace because I was on an email chain for the Christian Community Development Association. I just attended an event out here in Detroit, which is the area I'm in right now. And just thought the organization looked interesting. They were really trying to do some work to uplift community. And I thought to myself, I was consulting at the time, so I was really shopping myself around a bit, and so I thought to myself, they need an architect, they need a designer, they need somebody who can come out there and do urban planning. And I, at that time and still, really felt that my calling in life was to be an architectural missionary, right? So I wanted to share the good news and gospel of Christ, really that people should love God and love one another, and to use design to equip them with skills to make their communities the places they wanted to be. Make them places that were beautiful, make them places that were safe, make them places that were loving, because I felt like if you take a discipleship approach toward design, then you make communities that can thrive from the inside out, where all the skills you need are right there embedded within it. So given that, and given that I was consulting, I just threw a resume at them because they were looking for an education programs coordinator, ironically enough. And I got on an interview and they were like, well, why do you want to be our education programs coordinator? And I said, I don't. I truthfully, I don't want to be your education programs coordinator, but I see what you're doing. You understand broken windows theory. You understand this notion that small changes can make big differences and that the built environment can really change behavior and culture and outcomes. And I want to help you do that work. So they actually hired me still to be, they called it their community development coordinator. We changed the title. I'm now the community development director. But
I like it.
I still relaunched all the education programs because they needed somebody to do that. But then I had the opportunity to help really flesh out and create the vision for community development at Bridge of Grace.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So God was really good. It took a year. We finally got there.
That's awesome. I like how you said that. Like, I don't really want to, I want to do this specific thing. I think sometimes we can often lack that boldness to just say what we want.
Well, it's easy when your bills are paid and you don't need a job. I mean, to be honest, there's somebody out there where you really need that job, you might not want to take that approach. But
right.
In that case, the boldness, it worked out for me.
Yeah, I get that. That's amazing. So I feel like, my understanding or my awareness of you just came from seeing you synonymous with so many unique and cool projects happening in Fort Wayne. I didn't know where you came from. I feel like I remember the first creative mornings I saw you do. Do you know Krista Dene? Do you remember Krista Dene?
Yes, of course I remember Krista. I met her at that Creative Mornings event.
Yes. Okay, so Krista Dene passed away. She was an incredible woman.
Beautiful soul.
And she had roped me into coming to a creative morning. I was like, I don't know who this young lady is, but we were all a part of this text thread, and she was just like, you need to come see Rena. And I was like, all right, I'm going. And then ever since then, I was like, well, that was amazing. And so I've just kind of followed your work ever since then. And you just everything your name is on is something really cool. And so awesome. I'm so glad that you took the time to sit down and talk with us about this, because I think it's a really great topic, and from someone with such an astute background who deals so much in community, who deals so much with educated and profound or well-connected people. I think it's really important, your perspective on what education looks like and how we perceive it and the impact that it has on communities, especially on low income and BIPOC communities as well, because we know there is a consistent and systematic lack of education, lack of access, lack of quality mentorship, which is why Empower You Podcast exists. And so I think it's important that we talk about this. These are principles that can be applied across a lot of communities. But I want to make sure that, the little Black boys and girls who I often felt like and feel like are remembered. Because I remember being like that and not knowing who to talk to and feeling very lost in the world and not knowing what to do. And a lot of young people who don't have that, they just kind of find other things to do. And sometimes it's not super productive. And so
Sure.
I think it's good that we talk about this. And you work with a lot of diverse young people, which is beautiful. And so I think it's awesome. So thank you.
Absolutely.
My first question to you is what was your first impression of education? You said you came from a really stable, normal, amazing family. So what was the dialogue around education growing up?
Oh my goodness. Education growing up was a given. It was just a given. That's how I remember feeling. In my normal household, I don't know what normal means. Normal is whatever you grew up in, right? That's your normal.
Right. Absolutely.
But for me, I just felt like education was a given. That I was expected. It was my job to come home and bring in good grades. That was my job. Even there were times when I said, I want to get a job, because my friends would get jobs and they would buy the cool, Filas or the hush puppies with the suede, the Coach belts with the tags still on it. So, it's authentic and whatnot. And I kind of coveted that a little bit at times because my friends looked cool and I was a nerd. I would have still been a nerd with the Filas though. That's okay.
That's all right.
But and segue, my sister told me being a nerd was cool, and I believed her because I thought she was cool. So thanks to big sis for that. She told me, she said, people 20 years out of school, what do you call a nerd? And I was like, I don't know. She said, they call them boss, baby. Boss.
Oh, I love that. I almost said millionaire.
Yes. So, but to bring it back, it felt like a given. They told my parents, told me, you don't need to work to get that. It's your job to go and get these grades, because what I need you to do is earn a scholarship for college. So college also felt like a given. I told my mom one year I wanted to do a gap year and travel the world. And she said, no, you will not. Your gap will be your summer and you will go straight to school. So it was a mandate. But by the same token, looking around myself, like I said, my mom went to college. She actually graduated when I was maybe 5 or so. So there are photos of me with her in her cap and gown, so that was a part of our family folklore. My father went to pharmacy school at a time when Ferris State only graduated 1 Black pharmacist per year. That was kind of their quota because they didn't want to graduate too many because that might bring down their cachet, right?
Yeah.
So he graduated on time, amen, at that time. And, so I had 2 college educated parents. When I looked out my window or rode my bike around our neighborhood, I saw people who looked like me. Our neighborhood was Black and Jewish primarily. And I saw people who were doctors, who were lawyers, who were engineers, who were newscasters, teachers, etc. And most of them looked like me. Most of them looked like me. When I went to my friends' houses, they would all tell us, oh, when so-and-so grows up, look at her. She looks like she's going to be a model. But they would always look at my nerdy self and say, Rena's going to be a doctor. Rena's going to be a judge. Rena's very studious. And so that is what was sown into me growing up. So education was something I know you can feel my privilege, but it was something that was a given. It was something that was expected of me and something that was very much the norm for my folks and for the friends that I had around me, just given our geography and where we were.
I love that. And I want to say this because you mentioned it. It is a privilege to be in an environment that's empowering. It's a privilege to exist in a society where things are possible, and I don't feel like you should be ashamed of that.
Thank you.
And I don't think anybody should be ashamed of that. I don't think privilege.
You're right. I mean, my parents worked hard to give me that.
Absolutely.
They worked extremely hard for that. So I'm grateful.
Absolutely.
I'll say it that way. I'm grateful for it.
And what makes privilege real, in my opinion, is the way that you use it, and the seeds that you sow with it. And for anybody listening, what you do with the advantage or disadvantage that you're presented with in life, that's what tells the story about you.
Absolutely.
Whether you understand the unique position that you didn't necessarily do anything to be put in, but that you're very grateful for. When you understand that, and you understand that comes with further commitments to help others, I think we need to reframe some of the privilege talk, because I don't think there's anything wrong with having a great opportunity. It's just, you gotta be mindful and do good by other people as well. So anyway, I'll jump off that soapbox. I want to know, so what were some of the career paths that interested you, right? You said you're an architect, but you also said that people said that you should like run for office, and that you were going to be, like a scientist or a nerd, or you were going to be a dignitary or scholar in some way. Like, how did you choose your career path, and who were some of the scholars you looked up to?
Sure. So I still might run for office. Stay tuned. But
come on now, do it.
But
do it.
Depending on how far back you want to look, when I was very young, I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a ballerina and a cowgirl too. And my parents bought me both the cowgirl hat and the tutu and let me run around the house in that. But when I went to high school, I went to a college prep school in Detroit, in Metro Detroit, for those who want to be sticklers about 8 Mile and whatnot. And I felt when I was in high school that there were kind of 3 paths to success. Either you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, or you're an engineer, and that's it. And my personal habit was to test things out. And my parents, like I said, tutu, hat, they encouraged me to test anything out. Try it. See if you like it. See what you think about it. Go ahead and do it. That's how I ended up both tap dancing and making model rockets as a kid, right? So I tried out debate because that was the closest thing I could think of to law. And I didn't care for it. I liked the social component of it, but it wasn't really about who presented the best argument or who was creative or who was thoughtful. It was about these real technicalities. And I didn't enjoy that. I just felt like this isn't my shtick. And then when it comes to medicine, cats on formaldehyde were not my thing. And I learned that. So I was leaning toward engineering. But I have a certain love for the arts. This piece behind me, that's something I drew. So it's like I love drawing, I love painting, I love making things, I love working with my hands. At the time, I really loved metals. I was in band. And so I started learning about architecture mostly because of my tree hugging tendencies. I took an AP environment course because I was into it. And I learned that buildings consume something like 40% of the energy that we consume, that buildings put off some ridiculous amount of the pollution that we put off. I realized that a third of my class, including myself, had lung disease because of our environment and the air quality in Detroit. I had a teacher ask us what color the sky was and then walk us outside to see if it was really blue, and it wasn't. And learning that was because of our built environment. So I felt like, okay, buildings matter. The way we grow up, the places we grow up in, they matter. And rich or poor, the air is not clean, it's going to be dirty for everybody. You know, you can't make that not affect your body and your person. So in that class, in Mr. Minton's AP environment class, I decided that I was going to pursue an architecture degree. And I felt a little better about it than engineering, because in architecture, you have room for creativity. You have room for thought. You know, 1 + 1 = 2, yes. And I feel like in engineering, you kind of stop there, unless you're in a really special setting. But in architecture, it's like, yes, 1 + 1 = 2, 3 - 1 = 2, 2 to the first power = 2, you know, whatever to the logarithm of such and such = 2. And as long as you can understand those skills and can wrap your head around a problem, you can come up with any number of solutions. And they're all correct, or they have some degree of correctness to them. And I loved that. I loved that. So I decided to study architecture because I wanted to make a difference. And then I made sure I went to a university that still offered law and still offered medicine and still offered engineering, just in case I changed my mind. It still kind of felt daunting at 16, 17 to have to decide what you're supposed to do with the whole rest of your life. So I assumed, I was like, if I don't stick to architecture, I want to make sure that I can transition my major without transitioning schools altogether.
Yeah.
But I went to school and I loved it. I couldn't imagine studying anything else.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think you said buildings matter. When you said that, it just kind of took me back a little bit, you know, because more so than just the pollution that we get from buildings, the appearance of buildings can cause you to feel certain ways about yourself, especially things you grow up seeing. And so when you said that, I was like, wow.
I mean, think
so
about
true.
it. The first question people ask you, maybe the second or third is, where are you from? Where are you from? Where do you live? You know, so you internalize that. You internalize that. That is a part of your identity. So when you're from a place that's hoity-toity and well-to-do, and you can say, oh, I'm from, you know, Beverly Hills, such and such, you know, that carries a certain cachet. But when you say I'm from this neighborhood or that neighborhood, and it doesn't carry that cachet, people treat you differently. They treat you in accordance to what they think your stock is worth, your social capital is worth based on that neighborhood. And I felt that, sorry Fort Wayne folks, I felt it when I moved to Fort Wayne, because I didn't tell anybody I grew up in Southfield, Michigan. Where's Southfield? Nobody knows that in Indiana. So I said I'm from Detroit. Then I did spend time living and working in Detroit. And when I would say I'm from Detroit, I would get, oh, you know, oh, you're from Detroit. I never want to go there. Why not? It's a great place to be. I love Detroit. You know, but then I would say I'm from Detroit and I live in Southeast Fort Wayne. And I didn't know what that meant either when I moved to the city. And I had people say, oh, you don't live Southeast. And I didn't know what Southeast meant. So I was, what intersection? Oh, I'm like on, you know, Pettit and such. Oh, that is Southeast. And I literally had some people turn their full backs to me during conversation when I said I moved here from Detroit and I lived in Southeast. I was no longer worthy, right? So when you think about where someone's from, that deeply colors, I think, how they feel about themselves and frankly, how other people treat you. And so that's part of why I feel like having a solid built environment around you, having the place around you be up to a certain standard of quality, of excellence, not having vacancy, not having vandalism, not having broken windows and people treating your neighborhood like it's a trash can because they're dumping their tires and mattresses in it. Like, I think all of that should be like a basic fundamental human right. Beauty and beautiful environments and safe environments should be a human right. But when we want to talk about the pollution as well, we can also talk about the lead that's in Fort Wayne's pipes and solder in Southeast Fort Wayne.
Uh-oh.
We can talk about that.
I mean,
or the mold that's in some of the walls in our low-income neighborhoods that people may not want to complain about because they don't want to upset a landlord. We have some issues, family. Just a couple. And these things, to get back to education, all hinder one's ability to focus, one's ability to have their brain functioning well, one's ability to physically breathe well and get the oxygen that they need. And if you have people in toxic environments, how do you expect them to function well? Throughout the day, they're from the children to the adults, exhausted all day long. And yes, because you work hard, and yes, because you're hustling, but also because you're literally living in what most design professionals will call a sick building.
Thanks for listening to Empower You Podcast. I want to take a second and tell you about a service I've been using that has literally changed my life. Akita Ricks, the founder of SoarYourScore.com, helped me erase negative items on my credit score, provided me a clear path to improving my credit, and raised my score by 100 points in the first 90 days. Like, whoa. The best part about all of this is all I had to do was follow instructions. Now, if you're like me and you need a credit bestie, you need to click the link below and schedule your absolutely free discovery call today. Tell them Kid Boy sent you.
Wow, you said so many things. You said that, when people ask you where you're from and then you tell them, depending on where it is, that impacts the way that they view you, and it impacts the value that they feel like you bring to an environment. And I think children from a very early age are very impacted by the way people feel about them, especially from certain environments. They take everything personally. They feel like I'm bad because I live here, and that's why people treat me bad, and that's why bad things happen to my family. Because I'm bad, and we're bad, and we live here. And if we were good, we wouldn't live here. And because I'm bad, I probably shouldn't try to get an education. I probably shouldn't try to do anything else, because we're just all bad, and this is our plight. And I think that narrative continues to get reinforced. That's why I have just so much respect for what you do, because I grew up in an environment that there were a lot of areas to this day that are just completely overgrown, completely torn down, completely vandalized, completely a mess. And somebody owns those properties, right? But there's no reason to do anything with it. There's no investment there because they feel like you're not worth it. When there's more gentrification, or when there's more business development, or when there's more whatever, then I'll care enough to just not pay my taxes on the lot. Does that make sense?
And because nobody's holding them accountable to do anything about it, right? Some folks are overachievers, and they'll get out there and they'll take some initiative, and they'll make their homes beautiful regardless of what's happening around them. But I think the fact of the matter is, especially with a lot of landlords, unfortunately, a lot of them don't live in our communities, right? So, we've seen examples in Mount Vernon Park, the neighborhood I work in, of landlords who live outside of this city, outside of this state, and frankly, outside of this country. We have landlords from New Zealand in Mount Vernon Park. So the landlord in New Zealand doesn't know what that property looks like, and they're not going to care until someone holds them accountable to it. Do they know the condition of the sidewalk? No. Do they know the condition of the siding? Probably not. And like I said, a lot of renters are going to be afraid to mention anything, but also I feel like our municipality, our government, also needs to have a role in holding folks accountable, Yeah. So right now, what you can do, sidewalks, for example, if your sidewalks aren't in proper condition, or your neighbor's sidewalk, if you don't want it to be you, if your neighbor's sidewalk is not in great condition, you can call 311 and say, this sidewalk is a trip hazard. And 311 will issue a letter to the homeowner saying, hey, your sidewalk's not in great condition. We're not going to be liable if someone gets hurt. And the 50-50 cost share program is available to you if you want to repair your sidewalk. So I think if no one's holding you accountable, what incentive do you have to fix it if it's just a number on your spreadsheet, right? But the other thing is for homeowners, when people around you begin to fix things up and address properties, usually you see the whole neighborhood begin to change. Nobody wants to be the worst house on the block. Nobody
Right.
wants to be in that situation. And no landlord wants their property to be the worst one on the block, and they can't command the rent that they think they should be able to.
Absolutely.
So just mobilizing a few key people, a few key properties, and eliminating the worst ones can really push, really push the standard. But getting back to what you said earlier, that idea of different people kind of receiving education differently. You know, a friend of mine, if he's watching this, hi Steve, once forwarded me an article from Edutopia. And the headline of it was, "The spatially gifted, our future architects and engineers are being overlooked. Though they have potential to excel in many fields, we're neglecting a large body of students." And it basically went on to say that kids with strong spatial skills often tend to dislike school, have trouble paying attention in class, and compared to kids with more pronounced math or verbal talents, they're more likely to be suspended, leave high school without a degree, and get in trouble with the law. You know, and it's not because they're not intelligent children. It's because they think differently. They think three-dimensionally. They think in pictures and things of this nature. And my friend, he was teasing me. He's like, "Oh, I'm sure glad you're not in jail, Rena." You know? But I told him, I sent him an email back like, "Do you know how easily that could have been me? Do you know how easily that could have been me?" Because I was in third grade, which is, you know, the year they used to make those prison projections. I was intensely bored in class.
Yeah.
I was intensely bored. My grades weren't phenomenal. But I was lucky again to have like these two folks in my corner who said, no. When I tested well, and my teacher actually said, no, just because she tested well in the state standardized thing doesn't mean she's smart enough to go to the honors classes. My parents said, "Oh, no, we're not having this. We want you to talk to our daughter. We want you to talk to our daughter. We want you to talk to her. She's a smart kid. She can do it. She can pull her weight." And so they made that push, you know. And then when my folks saw and it was so different. I went from regurgitation and just, "How do you spell this word? This is how you spell this word. What color was so-and-so's horse? This is what color." Like, who cares? I didn't even care when I was 8. But when I went to honors classes, you know, at 9, the ripe old age of 9, all of a sudden we were building dioramas. We were making model volcanoes. We were doing model rockets. We were, you know, all of a sudden it was three-dimensional and it was spatial, and my mind latched onto it and I got it, and it was more creative. So I feel like that's a huge need too, right? To make sure that there's not just one type of education, that we meet our kids who have different skill sets and different minds where they are, and that we don't make it so that they can only obtain those resources based upon what zip code they were born in, right?
And you know, and that leads me even into what I was going to ask you. Is just like, what do you feel like is the missing link there, right? Is it access? Is it teaching models and different formats of introducing more complex or more subject matters or topics or information to young people? Is it just an access issue? Is it a zip code issue? Like, what do you feel like the missing piece is? Because you're in it, right? Not only do you work for an organization that gets funding and to do these projects, but you yourself come from those environments, which even with the amount of support that you had from your family could have easily swallowed you up and had your parents not been as proactive in your life,
right?
You know, you could have received those same "I'm dumb, I'm not good at this stuff" messages and completely had a different life, even from coming from an environment that was supportive of your betterment. So what do you feel like that missing link is? You know, when you look over these kids or you look into, you know, these young people, what do you feel like, just in your opinion? Nobody has to be right about everything, but what do you think?
I mean, as soft and fuzzy as it might feel, I mean, access does matter. Money does matter. Zip code does matter. But I feel like one of the biggest missing elements is just plain old hope. You know, what are our kids hoping for? What future are they hoping for? I've met kids who told me what they wanted to be when they grew up when they were 14 years old. You know what I mean? They already had a dream and they already gave up by 14. Why does that make any sense? And when I asked them, well, why are you saying wanted? Why are you saying wanted? Like, explain that to me. And they said, well, because my parents have debt. They tried to go to college. It didn't work out. They have all this debt and they don't have a degree. And I don't want to be in that situation. And that's a logical response to that situation.
That's super logical.
When I first came to Bridge of Grace and started my first after school program, this is why I said the kids found me. I didn't find them. I had two little girls who just came across the street and would sit and stare at me after school. Bridge of Grace is right across the street from Levon Scott Academy. Love that school. Hardworking teachers. But these little girls would come and sit and stare. And so I was just like, okay. So I started coming up with stuff for them to do because they were at my desk every day. And I finally cut a deal with them to say, hey, if you come here just once a week, only once a week, I'll come up with some cool programming for us. So we started doing character building, career exposure, creativity, kind of the things that I would love to do as a kid. And they dug it too. But, I started asking them, like, why? They were always saying, you're different. You talk different. You look different. I didn't know, like I said, I was normal to me. I didn't know what that meant. And so finally I asked one of them, I was like, sweetheart, what do I look like? Because she kept saying, you dress different. I was like, what do I dress like? And she said, you dress like a very busy lady. And I was like, oh.
That's a lovely description.
Okay. And I kind of put the two and two together. I was like, okay, I'm an oddity because I'm here in a suit and I'm typing on a computer and I'm building a house on my computer. And why am I building that house on my computer? And is that house across the street? And, why do you answer the phone like that? These are all things I grew up playing with my dad's payroll machine. I grew up, how many grooves, how many numbers can I put in the thing? I grew up literally with a pill counter because that's what my parents did. I grew up typing because they used computers and because there's no child labor laws for family. So I grew up working in the pharmacy. I grew up seeing my parents look professional every day and my neighbors look professional every day. Our little girls, those two little girls weren't seeing that. And so they started coming and checking me out. So I think, seeing someone that looked like them in a position that was like that was different for them. And it made them feel like that kind of job was reachable and tangible to them. It didn't feel out of reach anymore, right? And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a place where literally nothing felt out of reach to me. But for some of our kids, the only outcome they see of college is debt. So that's not a hopeful path to follow. And if you only think, thinking back to my own history again, the National Building Museum, when I was at Howard, HU, there was a time when I was tutoring kids at the National Building Museum, and we were preparing them for this competition called School of the Future. And one of my classmates had a group of students where the students asked once they came to presentation time, are any kids in white schools going to be here? And he looked at them and said, well, maybe, but why does that matter? And the kid's response was, well, if a white school is going to be there, we already know we're not going to win. And my friend lit into this kid in the best way possible, the best way possible. How dare you speak that way of yourself? It doesn't matter who's in this competition. If you've given it your best because you have the intellect, you have the wherewithal, you have the smarts, you have the ability. Don't you dare doubt yourself just because you're not X, Y, or Z. So I think a lot of our kids are missing hope. And frankly, they're missing exposure to people who look like them, who are out here doing the thing. So I encourage everybody, whatever you look like. If you look like me, if you're out here wearing a hijab, if you have purple hair, whatever it is, if you're whatever normal is, get out there and let kids see you doing what you do so they know they can as well.
Absolutely. That's so big because, we get all kinds of images, right? You get all kinds of images about who you are. The media, the society in general will try to tell you who you are before you even have enough information to know yourself.
Right.
And so I couldn't agree with you more with that one. You know, it's just as far as like, be visible, be seen, and do good. Don't be visible and be seen for validation. Be visible and be seen because no matter where you're at, you have something to give, and you should understand that enough to give.
Do it for our future.
Yeah.
Do it for our future, and do it so that the kids will know you care. You know, I know a lot of friends like yourself who are out here doing phenomenal work, you know, and they don't always get credit. They don't always get credit for their work and their ideas. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And they'll say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm not doing it so people see me. I'm doing it because it'll benefit our community. It's like, but I want my kids to see you. I want them to see your face, and I want them to know that something happened in their community. Not to say that everybody shouldn't do good, but not just because someone else did it for them, or someone benevolently, charitably gave to the community out of the goodness of their heart, which keep doing that. It matters. But I want them to know it happened because someone who's from the community cared. The community itself cared. And because someone from the community put in the work and sweat and blood and tears to get it done, you know? Because that tells them my place, my whole community cares about me. And they care enough to make it work, and I can do that too. I don't have to wait for the benevolent billionaire to come and save me.
Benevolent billionaire. Ooh. And I think it dispels a lot of the thoughts that you'll have about yourself, right? You can grow up with a lot of narratives running in your head about what it looks like for you to be different than what you are. And because you only know what you are, it can be hard for you to break free of certain cycles and things. And I think about this, especially as it pertains to education and environment. You know, when people don't see, when children don't see, when young people don't see the non-traditional person winning, the person who looks like them winning, the person who has a similar background to them winning, they internalize this idea that because no one else did it, I can't either.
Right.
And so they don't go pursue things that they might be absolutely great at. And then on top of that, I think especially in communities of color, we battle with this idea of what it means to be educated. You know, we sometimes can hold education synonymous with selling out, right? We hold education synonymous with not having a voice in your community anymore. We hold education synonymous with losing all your swag or something. You know what I'm saying? And I think when you give back, when you put yourself intentionally in environments where you can pour into communities and into young people, you're retraining the narrative that's in their mind. You're encouraging them to believe something better about themselves. And I think that's really hard to do, because from the moment we wake up and you check your phone, and I try not to check my phone right away when I wake up, but sometimes
Don't do it.
I'm telling you, sometimes it gets me. But from that moment, you have someone else's voice and ideas in your head about you and what you should be doing with your life and where you should be going and how you should be acting. And so I think, you know, when you said visibility is important, that's why I value, you know, I wish somebody would have made some cool stuff out of the vacant lots I grew up around. And I internalized that stuff. You know, I felt like I was a part of my environment, and therefore I was less that I required less investment.
Wow.
That it was okay for people to not invest in me or to not
maybe that
think
you
much of
deserved
me.
less.
Yeah. And so I took it upon myself to constantly have to prove everything all the time. So much so now that even when there's absolutely nothing to prove, I can't like chill. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird, you know. That's why I just think it's amazing what you do. And I think this conversation is so important because we got to put faces to these projects, to these higher thinking and higher strategic learning, higher skill sets. And we shouldn't have to wait for the benevolent billionaire, right? There's so many resources within our own communities that we just leave untapped because we're afraid to be different. We're afraid because we don't see anybody like Rena. We don't see anybody like others. You know what I mean? Like, you're an oddity. So like when you talk about those little girls who are just like enamored with you, so much so that all they can do is stare. Like, what do you think they think about on a daily basis?
The thing is, those two in particular who started that program, they have phenomenal parents. They may not look like busy people, but they're phenomenal parents and they're pushing their kids. So that first little girl I met when I first moved here, and I was in 2015, I just ran into her. She's 16. She has a job.
Oh, wow.
She plans to go to Ohio State. And she made sure to let me know that she posts things about Jesus on her Facebook.
Well, good
so
for
people
her.
know her faith and can come to that through her. So incredibly proud of her. And I was just one part of her village, right?
That's amazing.
And her little sister, she told me she just got a job and is also really starting to think about what she's going to do when she goes to college as well. So those two are doing phenomenal. I'm super proud of them. But I also want to say just what you alluded to earlier when we talked about what does education look like in the Black community. I think that's important because education, having a piece of paper, having a degree, and being intelligent are not the same thing necessarily, right? Having it doesn't make you more intelligent. Not having it doesn't make you any less intelligent or deserving. And one of the points of Tired a Lot, which is the vacant lot project you were talking about, where we had kids be the designers of the vacant lots in our community. One of the points of that was to change the perspective, of the neighborhood. Yes, it can grow and change. Yes, it can get better. Yes, our community can be the catalyst of that change. But I wanted people to know that, specifically our young people, because I think the young people in particular get a bad rap. Millennials are ruining everything and the people behind them are ruining everything else. But, people would come up to me, oh, Rena, what are the kids going to design next year? And I was like, I don't know. They haven't done it yet. Well, you can't tell me they designed the such and such. And it wasn't one person. I had multiple individuals come up to me and say they couldn't believe, literally, that our kids came up with what they came up with. And it was like, no, our children are brilliant. So that project was also showing off to the rest of this community. If you just invest the time, if you just require a certain standard, no one rises to lowered expectations, right? If you just require a certain standard, let the kids know you believe in them and provide the support and framework they need, they can do anything. They can do absolutely anything. Our kids designed and painted a whole mural in 5 days. And I had a counselor who was like, you expect them to finish a mural in 5 days? And I was like, yes. And if we're going to hire you, I'm going to need you to think they can do that too. And when it ended, she was like, wow, these kids can really do anything. They can accomplish anything. They can. They're brilliant. And some of them may go off to get degrees, and that's wonderful. And they'll still be brilliant. And some of them might not. And that doesn't make them any less brilliant, and there are careers out here where you can do well.
Absolutely.
Pick up a computer, learn how to code, do that. And you can still have a great living. You can have a meaningful life. You can have hope and a bright future. That's what I want our kids to know. Is just that you have a brilliant mind. Just decide what you're passionate about. What do you want to change about this world? And go do that. And don't let fear get in your way.
And that's a big thing, because I think being afraid to leave your environment, being afraid to go to an institution where, none of your professors and none of the people who you looked up to or who are in authority figures, most of them are not of color, they're not Black, they're not, they're just they're just not like you. And so you feel like you constantly are trying to prove that you belong somewhere, or you're always trying to, you're always on your guard because there's this feeling you have, and maybe I'm tripping, but I know, you really feel pressure to not be that guy, to not be the stupid black kid.
Wow.
To not be the slow black kid.
Wow.
Like, man. I'm being real. I think that's something that a lot of young people are facing right now.
Wow.
And as you watch the changes that happen in higher ed, a lot of people don't say it. Like, there's a guy, he's trying to put together this black men's group on campus, and he's a good dude. He's got a great initiative. He's like, man, I can't seem to engage them. And I said, well, what's their biggest problem? What's the pain point that they're all experiencing? And so we sat there and we were just kind of chit-chatting and talking, and he said, I think it's loneliness. I said, what you mean?
Wow.
He said, even though, these are athletes and stuff like that, they stay so sequestered because the moment they leave these environments where they're validated, they just become incredibly lonely.
Right.
And so they don't engage in anything that's not pre-approved, so to speak.
Right.
Because they just don't know if they'll actually fit in any of those places enough to actually be vulnerable about it. And these are men he's talking about too.
Yeah.
So I just think that's encouraging that from a youth, from the time you're young, that you can do things, and that you matter, and that any place is a place for you.
Yeah, you
whether
belong
it's
in whatever room you're stuck
or
in.
Whatever room you want to be in. That's a whole different mindset than a lot of people grow up with. And so I just think it's really amazing.
And HBCUs are a thing, right? Now, I'm not saying everybody has to go to one, but at Howard University, I was not going to feel like the dumb black kid. I didn't feel like that in high school either. If anyone, I was the one who wouldn't shut up and raise my hand a little too much. But
that girl.
I was that girl. I was. I'm okay with that. Nerds of the world unite. But I feel like at a lot of black institutions, one thing they do is unfortunately, a lot of schools in underserved communities and lower income communities where a lot of people of color are, don't provide the same quality of education as other schools. But in a lot of HBCUs, you come in with classes that are meant to catch you up. There's an understanding that not everybody has the same starting point, and that could be based on the state you live in, or like I said, your zip code, your income, what have you. And so the classes are there. They'll place you, and they're there to catch you up. The tutors look like you. A lot of the teachers look like you. And that whole infrastructure is there such that by the time you get to sophomore year, junior year, you're there with everybody else. It's built in. So it's very welcoming. It's very loving. But I also wanted to say, thank God for your friend in that support group he's about to put together. Thank God for that, because sometimes it just takes one person to believe in somebody and to say, you can do it, for that person's life to change. My mom grew up impoverished, and she had a teacher and one book. And that book was Little Women, where she said I could picture something different, and someone believed in me that I could go after it. And she did. My father had his stepmom, and she believed in him and said, oh, no. You're not going to enroll in woodshop and gym and this, that, and the other. We're going to take advanced typing, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And I believe firmly that you can do all of it. So one individual saying, I see you, you can do it. My folks, I heard every single day growing up, my nerdy self, that I was beautiful. I should show you photos of what I looked like at 5. It was a hot mess. Glasses, braces, the whole bit. But I heard every day. You couldn't tell my nerdy self nothing. I was beautiful. I was so smart, and that they loved me. every day,
Yeah.
from at least by the time I was 3 until at least like 9th grade. By that point, I started doing what I do. Maybe they didn't think I was always beautiful by that point. Maybe I had an attitude, probably did. I was a teenager. But
and we all go through it.
if you instill those values early, they stick. And I felt like for me, Howard, that felt like family to me. My professors felt like they were my uncles. My classmates, it felt like those were my cousins. And we were all there together. And I was afraid of being lonely at Howard because my private school friends said, "Oh, you're going to a black school? Like you're going to fit in there?" I fit in fine because there's such a diaspora of Black people. We're from all over this world. We listen to all kinds of music. We wear all kinds of clothing, have different personality. You know what I mean? There's so much richness in that culture where, it was fantastic. I would walk across the yard and hear steel drums. I would walk into the cafe and hear people beating out, some kind of rap on a table. It was glorious. It was glorious. So I think it's incredibly important to find your group, to find those people who support you, to surround yourself with people who are doing well, not to be afraid of that. Because in band, you sit the first chair next to the last chair, and next thing you know, the last chair is challenging the first chair. So put yourself in proximity to the people who are doing well. But it's absolutely okay to seek out an environment that supports you, and it's absolutely okay to ask for help, especially if you're in college, because you are paying for it. You have already paid for those tutors. You have already paid for those professors' office hours. You're the boss.
Yeah.
Now, don't go act a fool because I said that, but you're the boss. You're in charge of your education at that point. So that act with that authority. Go get it.
That ownership is a different vibe. I know for me, when I was in school, my constant stressor was how am I going to stay here? How am I going to afford this? So I was working all the time, and so I get, because I didn't have the benefit of going to, a historically Black college. I'm glad I went to the school I went to. It was a great school, and it helped me do a lot of things. And more importantly, it really allowed me to develop a sense of strength, a sense of independence, and
resilience,
a sense of resilience, because I realized it was lonely. I realized I only had me to lean on. And not that that's the road for everyone, but I think what you said about community and needing to find your community, I think that's really important, especially for young people. Like your faculty and people may not look like you, your teachers may not look like you, but put yourself in proximity to the kind of people you want to be around. Whether that's somebody's book club, whether that's somebody's chess club and you don't play chess, but that's where all the kind of people you want to hang out are. Go to the chess club. Insert yourself in the path of greatness. Don't wait for anybody to open the door.
Right.
Don't wait for anybody to help you. They're not. Sometimes they will.
Sometimes.
But in other cases, at least in mine, and maybe this is some of my trauma, right? But they're not. You got to believe in yourself enough to demonstrate that you're not going anywhere. And slowly but surely, you'll start to see things start to turn in your favor.
Yeah, I had one professor. He'll know who he is as well if he watches this. But he told me once, this is going to sound weird and contrary, but he told me once, he said, Miss Bradley, I'm trying really hard not to imitate him because that'll give it away. He said, Miss Bradley, there are some people, because I think he could see my frustration a little bit. In the architectural field, only 0.2% of licensed architects in this country are women of color. 0.2%, wrap your head around that.
0.2.
So I was fortunate to go to a Howard where all my classmates looked like me for the most part. But my professor looked at me and said, some people will only ever see you as a woman. And he might have said as a Black woman, but I remember him saying as a woman. Some people will only ever see you as a woman, as he said, use that. Use that. He said, people will think you're not threatening. That people will think I'm not going to compete with them. They're so far out ahead of me that, they can be lax. They can tell me everything. Oh, you don't need to do this and you need to do that. And you don't know what you're doing, because if you did, you would be doing such and such, such and such and such and such. And so he was basically telling me, disregard the you don't know what you're doing part, because that's not true. But when they tell you what you should be doing, what would I be doing if I was you? Oh, okay. And whatever actually makes sense and sticks, when people throw out those gems, even if they think they're just, throwing them out to whomever, grab them, like learn from those folks. It was some good advice. It was some good advice. I had people tell me, sometimes flippantly, oh, why don't you just go ahead and do that? It's like, that's actually brilliant. That's brilliant. And there are some folks who I feel like they don't like me. They might never have. But I followed some of their advice and things that they told me to do, Well, if I was you, I would just do this. I don't know why you're doing it like that. It's like, you are right. And I did it and I flourished,
Yeah.
Did it and I flourished, So sometimes it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to have people underestimate you. It doesn't feel good to have people act like you don't know what you're talking about. But sometimes folks will drop some real gems on the folks they underestimate. Or they'll be open with those people that they don't think are a threat in a way that they just won't with those that they think are. So take advantage. Take advantage where you can. Some folks will, like, I do have people in my life who are wonderful to me, who gave me great advice, who looked out for me, who are supportive. And I have some who really mentored me by accident, and I'm still grateful.
Mentored me by accident. I love that. So listen, there's two things we need to do. One, I have one more question, but we got to get a thought exercise out of you.
Okay, let's do it.
We got to get a thought exercise, because we do thought exercises here and they're my favorite parts. I can't let you leave without a thought exercise. But my last question is, what's the one lie that you're happy you didn't believe?
The one lie that I'm happy I didn't believe. I feel like there are a few. I think that man. I felt like I thought about this one hard when I saw it, because there are several. I feel like there are several. There are folks who will always underestimate me, and I assume that they're wrong. I don't know. I've had people tell me, and this is professionally, personally, or otherwise, you can't always have what you want. You know what I mean? You can't have your cake and eat it too, kind of thing. Like, you can't do both. You can't both be someone who's doing meaningful work and expect to have a good standard of living. You can't expect, I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. It's like, no, I feel like I can be good or can do good and be well. So I reject the lie that I have to be some kind of martyr to do something that's incredible for my community. I think that's ridiculous. And I tell people that all the time. And I had that one shattered for me, honestly, by a former coworker. Hi, Jordy. I don't know where Jordy is. I don't even think Jordy's on Facebook. That's okay. But back in the day, I was going to go out and do some work in DC for free because I thought it was good for the community. And I just wanted to be a volunteer. And he said, why don't you get paid for that? Why aren't you trying to be a TA instead of a volunteer? And I was like, because I'm not doing it because I care about money. He said, but just because you're doing something good for somebody else doesn't mean that's not valuable. and that it's
Correct.
not worthwhile to someone else. So I suppose when I come back to it, the lie that I reject is that time that you spend doing something for your community should not be of value to you. That time spent that you're investing in the well-being of other people is something that you shouldn't put a price tag on. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you do that for money, but it's okay to value your time. It's okay to value your skill set. It's okay to value your experience. Otherwise, you're always going to be throwing crumbs, the crumbs of your time, the leftovers of your time, you know, the hours when you should be sleeping and eating, to helping the community. When really, truthfully, isn't it the dream to do something that matters, that's meaningful, that's gainful, and also eat? And also pay your rent, and also spend quality time with your family? Don't you want to do both of those things? So that's a lie. And I feel like it's one that a lot of people have internalized, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
That, well, if my community is underserved and low income, I don't want to charge anyone for anything. It's like, find creative ways to do it. But always value your time. Always value your time.
Absolutely. Always value your time. That's a whole bar right there. That's so good. Oh my goodness. You got me thinking now. Okay, listen, before I get off on another tangent, we got to do this thought exercise. I don't want to keep you on here too long. You know, I'll just keep talking. And so let's do a thought exercise.
Our thought exercise of the day.
So do you need me to tell you about the thought exercises?
Go ahead, explain.
Okay. So the thought exercise is just something personal that you do that helps you get through the day, right? Whether it's a mantra you tell yourself, or a certain book that you like to read, or a poem you recite to yourself, or maybe
Yes, mother. Sorry. My mom's telling me she's keeping my food warm. She still loves me.
Absolutely. Or just something that you find really inspirational that helps you get through those days where you're just like, man, this is a lot. You feeling stretched, you know? What's something that you do? Give us a thought exercise that can help us get through that.
Sure. So if it's okay, I might throw out more than one. One is prayer helps. You know, recentering yourself helps. So if you're having those stressful moments, if you need to meditate, if you need to breathe, if you need to get outside, if you have a God that you talk to, take that time. You know, a lot of times, like, prayer is usually the last thing I do after I exhaust everything else. And it's just like, why wasn't this the first? So recenter yourself. A second that I do personally is I try to challenge my own negative thoughts. You know, because in spite of the incredible environment I grew up in, there's still those voices that tell me, oh, you can't. How dare you? Who do you think you are to such and such? You know, and these inevitable questions that fly through your head of, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What if I'm embarrassed? You know, et cetera, et cetera. So I have projects. My friend Nahaya told me at one point, she's like, you're like that person who plans these really elaborate birthday parties, and then you like forget to invite people. But I don't invite people because I'm afraid that it won't be successful. You know, I'm not sure because I haven't done it yet. You know, it's not done. It's not complete. And so I've started asking myself the questions, you know, because the questions are going to come in your mind of, what if I fail? And I've started asking whatever that voice is, what if it goes great though? What if this is incredible? What if I knock it out the park? You know, ask yourself the other thing, and then you can give yourself some balance. If you're a writer, if you have journals, I recommend writing, because seeing things in black and white can give you a whole different perspective and stop it from looping, the negative looping in your mind. But the third that I do, and this is more of a periodic thing, like maybe once a month, once a quarter, is I make something I call the fear list. You know, the top 10 things I'm afraid to do at that given moment. What am I putting off? What have I not done? Who have I not called? You know, what am I not doing because I'm afraid to do it? What am I not doing? So I make a list. I usually type it out, the fear list. I'm afraid of this, 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 and this. And then I challenge myself to go do it. Because I feel like whatever those things are that you're most afraid of are usually the things that are in the way of you making the type of progress that you'd like to see with your own life. So that list is essentially me asking Rena, if I was not afraid, what would I be doing right now? If I had no fear, no doubt of myself, no doubt of the outcome, if I knew I couldn't fail, what would I be doing right now? And I write it out. I stick it to the back of my bedroom door so I see it when I wake up. And I challenge myself to do those things. So I recommend doing that. Assuming, I tell my students this, I tell some of my adult friends, because, well, I'm afraid, Rena, you're not afraid. It's like, I'm afraid, I just do it anyway. I do it scared. Because I have to ask myself with the assumption that I will never not be afraid, because oftentimes you don't get less afraid. It just festers and then you kind of push it under the rug and try to forget about it. Assuming you'll never not be afraid, friend, whoever you are listening to this, assuming you'll never not be afraid, how long are you going to wait? How long are you going to keep sitting on it?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And that is your
so
thought
many
exercise
things.
of the day.
Listen, we got our hands full with that one. Listen, you said so many things that are deeply profound. Thank you for that. That's a lot to unpack. Your fear list. How long are you gonna wait? Because you're never gonna get any less scared. That's. Oh my goodness! Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is really. That's gonna give me a lot to think about. Because we all have those things, right? And then you said, "I'm always afraid. I just do it anyway." I resonate with that deeply. Because anytime you desire to be more, it's going to take you in unfamiliar places.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's wow. Rena, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kipway.
Thank you so much. How can people find you, contact you, tell you that they are in awe of your genius and your light and wisdom? How can we get a hold of you?
Well, folks can find me on LinkedIn. I do actually respond to my LinkedIn inbox. My name on Facebook is just my name. There is an accent on the E in my name, so I'm that Rena. And on Instagram, I don't post much, but I'll see messages there as well. Or if folks want to come by Bridget Grace and check out what we're doing, I'm always happy to give tours, walking around our playgrounds, show you what the neighborhood used to look like, and our vision for the future. So come on out.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. You all do me a favor. Go find Rena on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and tell her thank you. Matter of fact, while you're listening to this, put 5 stars in the review and write in thank you, Rena, because I just feel so challenged in a good way from that thought exercise, from this interview, and the bravery that you continue to exude in the way that you go about your life and spending your gifts with all of us. And I just really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, friend.
Yes. So you all, again, go find Rena. Share this podcast or this video or the podcast with somebody who you care about. You can tag them in the comments, or you can just write out your fear list, because that is what you really need to do. Okay? All right. Listen, y'all, we will talk to you all super soon in another episode of Empower You Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'll talk to you later. Peace.
Empower You podcast is devoted to bringing real-world wisdom and encouragement to our listeners. We discuss a multitude of life principles and the process from an economic, cultural, and societal perspective. We believe that through tough conversations and shared wisdom, we can pave the path and leave a ladder for the future. Subscribe to our channel and let us empower you.